Ray Stevens wasn't just a wrestler, he was the man who invented making yourself look like you'd just been brutally beaten for a living. Before Ric Flair was flipping into corners like a rag doll, Stevens was already hurling himself into turnbuckles, bouncing off concrete and selling so hard the crowd thought they'd need to call an ambulance. He didn't invent the art of bumping. He perfected it, then set the standard so high, even the future thieves of his style couldn't top it. Stevens turned San Francisco into his playground, the Cow Palace into his ATM, and himself into the first real bump machine long before that phrase even existed. He made promoters rich, crowds hysterical, and his liver very, very angry. If Flair was the nature boy, then Stevens was the human crash test dummy. Except dummies don't usually wake up hungover and late for the next booking. This is the story of the man wrestlers stole from, fans stabbed, and history nearly forgot. Ray the Crippler, Stevens. If this is the short version of Ray Stevens you're watching, then click below for the full video and let's just jump right into it. Ray Stevens didn't just wrestle in San Francisco, he owned the bloody place. By the 1960s, he was packing the Cow Palace on the regular, becoming one of the biggest draws on the West Coast. Under promoter Roy Shire, Stevens wasn't just a heel, he was the heel. His turnbuckle flip bump made crowds gasp every night. He'd fly head over heels into the corner, smash the turnbuckle, blade himself, then topple to the concrete like he'd just had his career ended. Fans thought they'd witnessed a homicide, and Stevens milked every scream for box office gold. This wasn't a one-off stunt either. He was consistent, reckless, and creative. The guy who made bumping into an art form. Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels, and Sting would later nick his moves, but Stevens was doing it decades earlier. Sting even admitted in an interview that when he watched Stevens, he expected him to hit that turnbuckle flip every time. That's how closely tied the move was to his name. Outside the ring, Stevens was a walking contradiction. The man was both a top earner and a promoter's headache. He'd show up late, he'd show up drunk, or sometimes he just wouldn't show up at all. But when he did step into the ring, he could make even a headlock look like Shakespeare. In San Francisco, Stevens wasn't just a heel. He was the guy people genuinely wanted to kill. He generated so much heat that fans actually stabbed him at ringside. That's not heat, that's attempted murder. When you're getting shanked just for doing your job, you've hit a level of heel work most guys can only dream of, or have nightmares about. After dominating the West Coast, Ray Stevens moved to the American Wrestling Association. By the late 1960s, he was a household name. Promoters knew he could draw a crowd faster than most could cut a promo. He teamed with Nick Bockwinkel, forming one of the most successful heel tag teams in AWA history. Stevens brought chaos, Bockwinkel brought precision. Together, they terrorized fans and made promoters rich. Stevens' style was pure spectacle. He'd throw himself into the ropes, smash the canvas like he'd survived a building collapse. Somehow, he made it look graceful. Bockwinkel handled the technical side. He sold Stevens stunts and occasionally rolled his eyes backstage. This was where Stevens cemented his nickname, the Crippler, not just for his finishing hold, but for turning the ring into a demolition site. Guys backstage learned quickly, underestimate him at your peril. He could carry a match, a tag team, or an entire show on sheer unpredictability. Even in AWA, Stevens had issues. Late arrivals, partying too hard. But money and notoriety kept him in management's good graces. Together, Stevens and Bockwinkel created memorable tag team moments. Their matches became templates for future heel teams. Unashamedly stolen moves? Absolutely. But that's wrestling. Stevens left a blueprint, and everyone else just copied it. If you're loving Ray Stevens' chaos, hit like, because the Crippler deserves it. Subscribe for more wild wrestling legends, insane bumps, and backstage secrets. Don't just watch history, own it. Click, tap, and join the mayhem. Trust me, your feed won't survive without this madness. Ray Stevens wasn't just dangerous in the ring, he was a hazard everywhere else. Promoters loved him for the gates he drew. They hated him for the chaos he left behind. He partied hard, drank harder, and sometimes didn't show up at all. If you thought missing a call was annoying, try explaining to a packed arena why the main event heel is MIA, because he overslept after a bar fight. And the bar fights weren't stories to tell kids. Stevens would get into legit scraps, leaving bartenders, fans, and occasionally fellow wrestlers grimacing at the aftermath. One night, a bouncer threatened to call the cops, not on a fan, but on the Crippler himself. Stevens' reputation for trouble was so consistent, promoters started budgeting for cleanup fees. Even backstage, the man was unpredictable. You never knew if he'd show up sober, drunk, or somewhere in between. Wrestlers learned quickly, don't leave him alone with your drink or your dignity. But here's the thing, When Stevens stepped into the ring after all that nonsense, he delivered. Every dive, every turnbuckle flip, every bump looked like pure genius, or pure madness, sometimes both. His lifestyle made him infamous. It got him headlines. It got him in trouble. And it cemented the legend of a wrestler who lived as dangerously outside the ring as he did inside it. Ray Stevens didn't just sell matches. He sold chaos, mayhem, and a cautionary tale in equal measure. After dominating territories for decades, Ray Stevens finally hit the WWF, but it wasn't exactly a triumphant arrival. Vince McMahon Sr. brought him in for his experience and name value, but by then, Stevens was a veteran of chaos, both in and out of the ring. The WWF spotlight was brighter, but the opportunities were smaller. Stevens' innovative bumping style still turned heads. Fans familiar with his San Francisco work knew the turnbuckle flip and the Crippler's relentless stunts, but younger audiences barely recognized him. And Vince Jr.'s new vision of wrestling didn't leave much room for old-school wild men. Stevens went from drawing crowds to delivering matches that filled time rather than headlines. Backstage, he remained a handful. Even in a more corporate environment, Stevens' drinking and penchant for unpredictability didn't vanish. Promoters tolerated it because his skill was undeniable, but there was no hiding the fact. The man who once sold out arenas and made fans gasp for air was now treading water in a company that had outgrown him. Despite the fade, Stevens' presence left a mark. Fellow wrestlers knew they were watching a master. His moves, his timing, his willingness to risk life and limb for a show, it was still there. Only the audience and the promoters had changed. By the time his WWF run ended, Stevens was a cautionary tale of wrestling's brutal evolution. Innovation alone couldn't guarantee longevity. The Crippler had paved the path for the next generation, but even legends can get lost in the shuffle when the spotlight moves on. Ray Stevens didn't just make fans gasp, he made wrestlers pay attention. Every bump, every turnbuckle flip, every dive into concrete wasn't just showmanship, it was a lesson in commitment. Flair, Shawn Michaels, Sting, all of them borrowed from the Crippler's playbook. Some called it stealing. Stevens called it inevitable. Backstage, he was respected and feared. Younger wrestlers watched him like a living masterclass in how to sell, how to bump, and how to make a match feel dangerous without actually killing anyone. And make no mistake, Stevens made it look dangerous. Guys who thought they could half-ass a match quickly learned the hard way. The ring didn't forgive. Even in retirement, Stevens' influence persisted. His turnbuckle flip alone left a legacy that echoes in every corner of modern wrestling. You see it in high flyers, in over-the-top dives, and in the way top talent sells pain today. Stevens wasn't just a performer. He was a blueprint, a warning, and a benchmark rolled into one. Promoters, historians, and wrestlers alike acknowledge it. The Crippler set standards that no one could ignore. And while he might have faded from the main spotlight, his fingerprints are everywhere. Every risky bump, every dramatic spot, every gasp-worthy move has a little Stevens DNA in it. Ray Stevens lived hard, wrestled harder, and left the ring as a reference manual for anyone serious about the craft. He made chaos look graceful, pain look beautiful, and wrestling history a lot more interesting. Legends fade, some get forgotten. But the Crippler? He's still teaching, still inspiring, and still making wrestlers look like they're in mortal peril, even decades later. Ray Stevens lived like a demolition derby and sadly went out the same way. In 1996, he suffered a heart attack behind the wheel, crashing his car at just 60 years old. The Crippler left as recklessly as he wrestled. Sudden, brutal, unforgettable. He was the innovator of the bump machine, the blueprint for modern chaos, and the headache of every promoter who ever booked him. Legends fade, but Stevens' influence lives in every flip, every dive, every bone-rattling bump. Dangerous, brilliant, and gone too soon. That's Ray the Crippler Stevens. Thanks for watching.